Welcome back, Rare Coin Insider, to another deep dive into the mysterious world of coins, collectibles, and hidden treasures that could be sitting right in your pocket right now. Today, we're talking about one of the most talked about coins in modern U.S. coinage history, the 1979 1-cent coin, the humble penny that might just be worth a jaw-dropping amount of money today, even up to hundreds of thousands, and in some ultra-rare cases, people have claimed it could be worth nearly $196 million in collector legend. Sounds unbelievable? Well, stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this tiny copper coin has captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters around the world. Let's start with the basics. The 1979 penny. On the surface, it looks just like any other Lincoln cent, right? You've got Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait facing right, that iconic profile that's been on the coin since 1909. The words, "In God We Trust," curve proudly along the top, Liberty to the left, and the year, 1979, on the right, just below Lincoln's shoulder. Simple, classic, and deeply American. But hidden behind that simple design is a story of transition, of economics, of tiny differences that separate an ordinary penny from a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. Now, before we get into the high values and the crazy auction numbers, it's important to know exactly what kind of coin we're dealing with. The 1979 Lincoln cent, also known as the 1-cent coin, was struck by the United States Mint during a time of significant change. From 1909 up until 1982, U.S. pennies were mostly made from 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them that rich reddish-brown look and a solid metallic weight in your hand. The total weight of a 1979 penny is 3.11 grams, with a diameter of 19.05 millimeters and a smooth edge, no reading like you find on dimes or quarters. That might not sound like much, but to collectors, those numbers matter. They tell you what era the coin came from, and they help determine if the coin has been tampered with, cleaned, or faked. Real 1979 pennies ring with a particular tone when dropped on a surface because of that copper composition. And here's where it gets interesting. This was just a few years before the major composition change in 1982, when copper became too expensive and the mint switched to zinc-based pennies coated with copper plating. That's why 1979 pennies are the last of the old copper generation, a type of coinage that collectors truly cherish. Now let's talk about where these coins were minted. There were three primary mint locations for the 1979 Lincoln cent: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia produced the standard circulation strikes, and those coins bear no mint mark at all. That's how you can identify a Philly coin. Denver's coins, as usual, carry the small D mint mark just under the date, and San Francisco produced proof coins for collectors, which carry the S mark. The proof coins were specially made with polished dies and planchets, giving them a deep mirror-like background and frosty raised designs. These are usually found in mint sets or proof sets, never in circulation, so if you ever find a 1979 S-proof penny in your pocket change, that's already something special. But what makes one of these coins worth a fortune? Why do we hear stories of collectors paying hundreds of thousands, or even millions, for a coin that technically should only be worth 1 cent? The answer lies in rarity, condition, minting errors, and collector demand. Every single one of those factors can turn a common coin into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Let's start with condition. In the coin world, condition is everything. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, known as the Sheldon scale. A grade of 1 means the coin is barely recognizable, worn smooth by decades of circulation. A grade of 70 means the coin is in perfect mint condition, flawless under magnification. Most 1979 pennies that people find in circulation today are in what's called circulated condition. They've been handled, rubbed, dropped, and spent countless times. But once in a while, someone opens an old roll, a forgotten coin jar, or an inherited collection, and out comes a 1979 cent that looks brand new, with its original red copper luster intact, free of scratches, spots, or tarnish. Those red coins, especially in mint state grades like MS-66, MS-67, or MS-68, can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the market. For example, a 1979 deep penny graded MS-67 red by PCGS or NGC, two of the most respected coin grading companies, can easily fetch between $1,000 and $5,000, sometimes more if it's perfectly struck. And that's just a normal coin, no errors, no oddities, just a perfect specimen of quality. But the story doesn't stop there. It gets far more exciting when we talk about error coins. Minting errors are the hidden treasures of the coin world. They happen when something goes wrong during the minting process. The dies are misaligned, the metal blank is struck off center, double dies occur when the image is stamped twice slightly out of alignment, or a wrong planchet is used. Every error tells a story of how the massive, precise machines of the U.S. Mint sometimes go slightly offbeat, creating a one-of-a-kind anomaly that collectors crave. The 1979 penny is no exception. There are known examples of 1979 pennies with double die obverse, where Lincoln's features or the date appear doubled under magnification. Some coins have misaligned strikes. Off-center impressions where part of the design is missing but the rim is still visible. Those can be worth hundreds or even thousands depending on how dramatic the error is. There are even reports of 1979 pennies struck on foreign planchets, like dimes or other small denomination blanks, creating unique coins that don't match their intended weight or color. Those are incredibly rare and often authenticated by grading companies before being sold in auctions for huge amounts. And then we come to the legends, the stories that swirl around coins that supposedly sold for insane amounts, like the so-called $196 million penny. Now, it's important to be clear. Not every claim on the internet about astronomical coin values is real. Sometimes, those numbers come from misreported auction data or viral posts that exaggerate for attention. But behind every legend, there's usually a kernel of truth. There have indeed been pennies that sold for eye-popping amounts, especially older ones, like the 1943 bronze cent or the 1955 double die. Those coins are famous because they're confirmed, authenticated rarities. When people talk about a 1979 penny worth millions, they're usually referring to an extreme error or an ultra-rare proof coin with unique characteristics. Perhaps a coin struck on the wrong planchet, or one with a rare combination of features never seen before. Collectors and investors are drawn to these because they represent an intersection of art, history, and accident, something that shouldn't exist, yet does. Let's go deeper into the design details, because even the artwork on the coin tells part of its story. The obverse, that's the front side, features the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, appear on the shoulder of Lincoln's bust, a small tribute to the man who created one of the most enduring designs in American coinage. Brenner's original design debuted in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Lincoln's birth, and though the coin has seen some minor adjustments over the decades, the essence of Brenner's work remains the same, a strong, humble depiction of the 16th president, gazing forward with quiet dignity. On the reverse, that's the back side, we find the image of the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959 to replace the original, wheat ears, design. The Lincoln Memorial design was created by Frank Gasparo, and it's one of the most familiar sights to any American who's ever handled change. Look closely, and you'll see something fascinating. Within the tiny image of the memorial, right between the central columns, you can actually make out a tiny seated figure of Lincoln, a miniature within a miniature. This was a clever nod to the statue that sits inside the real Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and it's one of the most remarkable details ever included in a U.S. coin design. The reverse also carries the inscriptions, United States of America, along the top, E pluribus unum, in smaller letters just above the memorial, and 1 cent boldly at the bottom. It's a simple, balanced composition, but for collectors, it represents an entire era of U.S. coinage, one that would eventually end in 2008 when the reverse design changed again to honor Lincoln's bicentennial. Now, when we talk about a 1979 penny being worth millions, what we're really exploring is the incredible range of factors that can influence a coin's value. For instance, the market value of copper itself plays a role. Each pre-1982 penny contains about 2.95 grams of pure copper, which at today's metal prices could make the melt value of the coin worth more than its face value. Of course, it's illegal to melt U.S. coins for profit, but that doesn't stop people from collecting copper cents as a hedge against inflation or as part of bulk copper investments. But aside from metal value, there's the human factor, nostalgia, history, and rarity. People love stories, and coins tell stories better than almost any artifact. A 1979 penny might have passed through thousands of hands, maybe bought someone a stick of gum, a newspaper, or sat forgotten in a child's piggy bank for decades. And then one day, that same coin could end up on an auction block, shining under bright lights, as collectors from around the world bid passionately to own a tiny piece of history. So, when you hear about a coin selling for $196 million, it's not about the penny itself, it's about what it represents. It's the thrill of discovery, the idea that something ordinary could turn out to be extraordinary. Maybe it's a prototype, a misstrike, or a coin that never should have left the mint. Maybe it's one of a kind. And that's what drives the high-end market, uniqueness. There might be billions of 1979 pennies in existence, but if even one of them has a special feature, a flaw, or a story behind it, that single coin could be priceless. We'll talk about the actual auction values and modern market trends in the next part of this video. But for now, let's pause to think about how amazing it is that a 1-cent coin, produced in the millions, can still inspire this kind of fascination. It shows that in the world of numismatics, that's the study and collection of coins, even the smallest denomination can hold immense value, both financially and historically. Now let's get into the part that really fires up every coin hunter's imagination, the rare errors and the record-breaking auction stories behind the 1979 1-cent coin. Because while millions of these coins were minted, only a handful ever reached legendary status, and those are the ones that can turn a simple piece of copper into a life-changing discovery. First, let's talk numbers. The total mintage for the 1979 Lincoln cent was enormous. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 6.02 billion coins, Denver followed with more than 4.14 billion, and San Francisco produced around 3.6 million proofs. That's billions with a B, an ocean of pennies. When you think about it, that's why most 1979 pennies will never be rare in the traditional sense. You could scoop up jars of them, and still be holding only face value change. But among billions, sometimes the minting machinery hiccups, just for a split second, and that's when something extraordinary is born. Imagine the scene inside the U.S. Mint in 1979. Huge coin presses slamming down hundreds of times per minute, each strike imprinting Lincoln's familiar face into glowing copper blanks. Everything timed to perfection, except when it isn't. A planchet might shift slightly, or a die might be doubled, cracked, or polished too aggressively. 1 second's imperfection can create a coin that collectors spend decades searching for. One of the most coveted types of error is the double die obverse. When this happens, the die, the metal stamp that presses the image onto the coin, receives a doubled impression from the master hub. The result? Every coin it produces shows a faint, but visible doubling of certain design elements. On a 1979 cent, that doubling can sometimes be seen in Lincoln's date, especially the 9, or in the letters of Liberty. Under magnification, it looks almost like a shadow image, and collectors go wild for it. Depending on visibility and grade, a clear double-die obverse can fetch hundreds to several $1,000s. Another major error category is the off-center strike. If the blank planchet isn't perfectly seated between the dies, part of the design is struck off the edge, leaving a crescent-shaped blank space. The more off-center, the rarer it becomes, especially if the date is still visible. A 1979 penny struck 40% off-center with a full date could easily sell for $500 or more. One particularly dramatic example, struck almost halfway off the coin, appeared at a heritage auction and sold for more than $2,000 simply because it looked so striking and yet retained Lincoln's portrait and date. Then we have the broad strike errors, where the collar that normally shapes the coin's rim fails, causing the metal to expand outward like a flattened pancake. These coins look larger than normal, but keep their full design details, giving them a weirdly stretched appearance that collectors find fascinating. Values can range from $50 to several hundred depending on condition. And of course, there are the legendary wrong planchet strikes, the holy grail of mint errors. In these cases, a coin is accidentally struck on a blank mint for a different denomination or even a different metal. Imagine a 1979 penny struck on a dime planchet. It would be smaller, silver-colored, and weigh only 2.27 grams instead of 3.11. Verified examples of such mistakes have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. There's even a rumor, though unconfirmed, of a 1979 cent struck on a foreign coin planchet that may have escaped the mint, giving rise to those wild multi-million-dollar valuation stories. Whether myth or reality, those tales feed the mystique surrounding this year. Another factor that adds mystery to the 1979 cent is its transitional status. The early 1980s were a turbulent time for U.S. coinage as copper prices surged, making it more expensive to mint pennies than their face value. So, in 1982, the mint switched to copper-plated zinc planchets weighing only 2.5 grams. That means the 1979 and earlier pennies are among the last solid copper generations, a fact that gives them inherent appeal. Collectors often hoard pre-1982 cents precisely for their copper content, but the 1979 issue sits right in that sweet spot of historical and metallurgical importance. Now, what about the proof coins from San Francisco? These were never meant for circulation. They were struck multiple times with specially polished dies, resulting in mirror-like fields and frosted details. The precision is breathtaking. Every strand of Lincoln's hair, every line of the memorial rendered in crystalline clarity. In perfect condition, a proof 70 deep cameo, a 1979 cent might sell for $50 to $150 depending on demand. But within that run, there are subtle varieties that can explode in value. One famous distinction is between the Type 1 and Type 2 mint marks. Type 1 has a blobby S, while Type 2 shows a clear, crisp serifed S. The Type 2 proofs are much scarcer, and in flawless condition can climb well above $1,000. Serious proof set collectors pay top dollar for pristine examples with that sharp mint mark. Now let's shift to the market side. How values are determined, who sets the prices, and how myths spread. The modern coin market is a blend of art, economics, and human psychology. A coin's value depends on supply, demand, condition, and narrative. Grading companies like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company, play a huge role. Once a coin is authenticated and encapsulated in a tamper-proof slab with an official grade, its value becomes far more predictable. Investors trust certified coins. So a 1979 decent graded MS-68 read by PCGS might achieve a real-world price of $6,000 or more, while the same coin raw, ungraded, might bring only $10 or $20. That's how dramatic grading can be. Auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections regularly list high-grade 1979 cents, and while they don't usually reach into the millions, some spectacular examples have indeed hit five-figure prices. A flawless MS-69 red example, practically perfect, could easily cross $10,000 under the right market conditions. And because populations at that level are tiny, sometimes fewer than a dozen certified, collectors are willing to pay exponential premiums for perfection. But how do these astronomical stories, like the $196 million penny, start? Usually from a mix of misunderstanding and viral curiosity. Someone sees a news headline about a rare coin selling for millions, perhaps a 1943 bronze set fetching $1.7 million, and assumes any old penny from a similar period might be just as valuable. Then social media amplifies the story, blending truth and fiction, until people genuinely believe a 1979 cent could be worth $196 million. In reality, that number is symbolic, representing the dream of discovering a unique error rather than a documented sale. Still, it's not impossible that a truly one-of-a-kind minting anomaly could one day command an astronomical figure, if authenticated and marketed correctly. Let's not forget the aesthetic and historical value. Every coin reflects its era, the art, technology, and politics of the time. In 1979, America was experiencing inflation, global change, and technological progress. The mint itself was modernizing, moving toward more efficient production lines, and experimenting with new compositions. The Lincoln cent, unchanged in design for decades, symbolized continuity amid change. That's part of why people feel emotionally attached to it. Collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying history, nostalgia, and a sense of permanence, and there's something deeply poetic about it. A coin worth 1 cent, traveling through decades, perhaps jingling in pockets during the late 70s energy crisis, maybe passing through vending machines at gas stations, and now, 46 years later, being examined under bright lights by a numismatist searching for doubling on the date. It's like a time capsule small enough to hold between your fingers. Now let's talk about how to identify if your 1979 cent might be special. The first step is basic observation. Under good lighting, check the coin's surface. Is it bright and shiny with a deep red color? Or is it dull brown with wear? Next, look closely at the date and the letters. Any doubling? Any misalignment between obverse and reverse? A magnifying glass or 10 times loupe helps immensely. Weigh the coin. It should be 3.11 grams. Anything significantly lighter or heavier might indicate a wrong planchet strike or damage. Listen to the sound when gently dropped onto wood or glass. Copper pennies make a distinct, crisp ring, while zinc cents sound dull. That alone can tell you if you've got a pre-1982 copper or not. If you find something odd, compare it with online resources like PCGS CoinFacts, NGC Variety Plus, or the Cherry Picker's Guide to Rare Varieties. And if it still looks promising, consider professional grading. Yes, it costs a fee, usually $30 to $50 per coin, but if it's genuine and high grade, the payoff can be huge. Collectors regularly turn pocket finds into four-figure profits just by authenticating them. Another fascinating subset of 1979 cents involves die cracks and cuts. Over time, dies wear and sometimes develop small fractures. When these cracks transfer onto coins, they appear as raised lines or blobs of metal. A cud happens when a piece of the die actually breaks off, leaving a blank raised area on the coin's surface. These aren't necessarily ultra-valuable, but they're sought after by variety collectors and can sell for $20 to $100 each depending on how dramatic the break looks. Let's zoom out for a moment and appreciate just how deeply people connect with pennies. Some might dismiss them as nearly worthless, but they're miniature works of art, each one a mass-produced miracle. The fact that the U.S. Mint can strike billions of near-identical coins every year with such precision is incredible, and when even one comes out different, it becomes newsworthy. That's the paradox that fuels the hobby. Sameness makes difference valuable. Collectors also talk about toning, the natural coloration that develops on coins over time. A 1979 cent stored in a humid environment might develop iridescent hues, blues, purples, oranges, forming what's known as rainbow toning. When the colors are even and attractive, they can add significant premiums. A beautifully toned 1979 decent graded MS67 red-brown once sold for nearly $2,500 simply because of its stunning color pattern. It's art meeting chemistry, and buyers love it. Now, as of the current market analysis, 1979 pennies in uncirculated rolls still trade for modest amounts, about $3 to $5 per roll of 50 of bright red. Proof sets from 1979 retail around $10 to $20, though the value climbs sharply for coins in perfect 70-grade holders. Error coins and ultra-high-grade examples continue to rise steadily because top populations remain low while collector interest keeps growing. The hobby itself has been booming since the pandemic era, as people rediscovered collecting while staying home. That surge pushed prices for premium coins to record highs, and 1979 cents rode that wave. In today's digital economy, online marketplaces like eBay and heritage auctions make it easier than ever to sell rare coins. But that convenience also breeds misinformation. Many listings claim wild values without proof. You'll see headlines like, "Rare 1979 penny, worth $500,000." But when you read the fine print, it's usually just a regular coin priced high in hopes someone uninformed will buy. Always verify sales by checking completed listings or auction archives. A real sale price tells the truth, asking prices don't. Still, even with hype aside, there's genuine potential. Suppose you find a flawless 1979 cent in an old bankroll. You send it for grading, and it comes back MS68 red, one of fewer than 10 known at that level. Suddenly, your 1-cent coin might realistically sell for $8,000 to $12,000. That's the magic of numismatics, possibility hidden in plain sight, and beyond money, there's the thrill of discovery. Each coin you check under a magnifier connects you with history. You start noticing design subtleties, the curvature of Lincoln's nose, the spacing of E pluribus unum, the texture of the fields. You start to see coins not as pocket change but as miniature sculptures, products of engineering and artistry. The 1979 cent embodies that perfectly, common enough to find, yet full of nuance for those who look closely. As we move deeper into the story of the 1979 1-cent coin, it's worth pausing for a moment to ask a simple question. Why do people get so emotionally invested in coins in the first place? Why would someone spend years searching through boxes of pennies, rolls from banks, or metal detecting fields in hopes of finding a coin that, on paper, is worth only a cent? The answer is the same reason humans have collected shells, stones, and artifacts for millennia: curiosity, connection, and the joy of discovery. Coin collecting, or numismatics, is part science, part art, and part treasure hunt. It connects us to history in a tangible way. Every coin has a date, a face, and a purpose. A 1979 penny isn't just metal, it's a timestamp from the late 20th century. It was struck in a year when disco was fading, when Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister of the UK, when the first Sony Walkman hit the shelves, and when NASA was preparing the Space Shuttle program. Every coin minted that year quietly witnessed that world. For collectors, the Lincoln Cent series is like a living timeline of America itself. Introduced in 1909 for the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it was revolutionary because it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. Before that, American coins used symbolic figures, Lady Liberty, eagles, wreaths, but never an actual person. Putting Lincoln's portrait on the cent was both a tribute and a bold cultural shift. Victor David Brenner, the artist behind the design, wanted to capture Lincoln's strength and humanity in a single image. His initials, VDB, famously sparked controversy when they first appeared prominently on the reverse in 1909. Critics thought it was too self-promotional, and the mint quickly removed them, only to restore them subtly decades later. By 1979, those tiny initials had returned, tucked neatly on Lincoln's shoulder, a quiet signature on one of the world's most reproduced portraits. So, when you look at a 1979 penny, you're not just seeing a coin. You're looking at a century-long design that endured wars, depressions, civil rights movements, and technological revolutions. That's part of its appeal. Collectors call it the cent that tells America's story. Now, when you combine that heritage with the thrill of rarity, the emotional power multiplies. Imagine holding a coin that almost nobody else has, a minting error, a proof with a double die, a near-perfect strike that glows with red luster. It's like owning a one-of-a-kind piece of art, except it came from your change jar instead of a museum. That emotional spark drives the market. It's what keeps auctions buzzing and forums alive. Let's explore that psychology a bit further. Collecting coins appeals to both sides of the human brain. The logical side loves the order, dates, mint marks, grades, catalogs. It's a hobby built on classification and precision. But the emotional side loves the story, the chase, and the surprise. You never know when the next coin you flip over might change everything. The 1979 penny is perfect for that balance. It's accessible, anyone can find one, yet complex enough to hide treasure-level rarities within. Another reason the 1979 penny keeps resurfacing in conversation is its position in American economic history. The late 1970s were a period of high inflation and economic tension. Prices were rising, oil shocks were shaking global markets, and everyday goods were becoming more expensive. That's partly why the composition of the penny mattered. Copper prices were climbing, and by 1981 the metal content of a penny was almost worth its face value. The government began researching cheaper alternatives. So, when you hold a 1979 cent, you're holding the tail end of an era, a coin that still had real metal value. It's not just symbolic currency, it's an artifact from the last age when American pennies were genuinely worth their weight. In collector circles, this economic backdrop adds mystique. They call these coins the last of the copper kings. It's why pre-1982 pennies are sometimes saved in bulk by metal hoarders. You'll find YouTube channels dedicated entirely to sorting copper from zinc, separating the 1970s pennies as if they were gold nuggets. The 1979 issue sits right in that hoarding sweet spot, plentiful, but meaningful. Let's travel briefly to the minting floors again. The Philadelphia Mint in 1979 was a powerhouse of production. Automation was increasing, but human oversight still mattered. Inspectors checked dies, adjusted presses, and monitored quality, yet errors inevitably slipped through. The Denver Mint, known for its high-volume output, struck billions more, often showing sharper details because of newer dies. Collectors sometimes debate which mint produced better-struck coins that year, and it's a close race. Denver strikes often display strong steps on the Lincoln Memorial, while Philadelphia issues can show slightly softer details but fewer die marks. San Francisco, meanwhile, was the artist's studio of the mint, slower, deliberate, striking proofs that gleamed like jewelry. A proof coin from 1979, when viewed under magnification, reveals layers of craftsmanship invisible to the naked eye. The mirror fields reflect light like liquid glass, while Lincoln's frosted face stands in contrast, a visual echo of shadow and substance. Gasparo's reverse design, the Lincoln Memorial, mirrors that duality, a monument to permanence rendered in a metal meant for circulation. The irony is poetic. Something designed for everyday exchange becomes a collector's object of obsession. But how do we get from that artistry to those staggering multi-million-dollar claims? It all begins with anomalies and provenance. In the coin world, provenance, the documented history of a specific coin, can transform value. If a particular 1979 penny were proven to have an extraordinary story, say, it was the first struck from a prototype die, or it came directly from a mint official's test batch, collectors could assign it near mythic worth. That's how you get numbers like $196 million floating around. It's speculative, of course, but speculation fuels markets. The belief that something could exist keeps people searching. Let's talk investment trends. Over the past 2 decades, the coin market has mirrored art and real estate cycles, surging when confidence in paper assets declines. During uncertain economic times, tangible items like coins, gold, and collectibles often see price increases. Investors diversify by purchasing rare coins, not just for beauty, but as a hedge against inflation. Copper coins like the 1979 cent, especially in top grades, fit that niche. They're affordable entry points for new investors who can't yet buy 6-figure rarities, but want something with potential upside. The lower barrier of entry makes the Lincoln Cent series one of the most liquid markets in all of numismatics. There's also the emotional security of owning history. Unlike digital currencies or stocks, a coin can't crash overnight due to software bugs or market panic. It exists physically. You can hold it, display it, even pass it down generations. That tangible quality is priceless to many collectors. When you consider the 1979 penny through that lens, it becomes a small but meaningful symbol of stability in a changing world. Now let's put ourselves in the shoes of a collector who's just found an extraordinary specimen. Picture someone sitting at their desk under bright light, a magnifier in one hand and a 1979 penny in the other. The market tracks these subtleties meticulously. Population reports from PCGS and NGC show how many coins exist at each grade. If there are only 5 coins known in MS68RD, collectors will battle fiercely to own one. It becomes a status symbol, not just owning the coin, but owning the best-known example of that coin. In numismatics, scarcity within perfection is the ultimate driver of value. Now, as we widen the lens again, consider how coins reflect cultural memory. The Lincoln Cent has survived more redesigned proposals than any other American coin. There have been debates in Congress about eliminating the penny altogether, citing cost and efficiency. Yet every time the discussion surfaces, public sentiment protects it. People simply like the penny. It's part of everyday life, a symbol of thrift, small savings, and childhood piggy banks. The 1979 penny sits in that emotional space, old enough to be nostalgic, common enough to be relatable. There's an irony in this too. The coin that costs more to make than its worth continues to endure because of tradition and sentimentality. And in that irony lies opportunity for collectors. Once a coin ceases production, or once its metal composition changes, nostalgia amplifies demand. The same pattern happened with silver dimes and quarters after 1964. Once silver disappeared, their desirability skyrocketed. Should the U.S. ever retire the 1-cent coin, 1979 copper cents could see a significant long-term rise in collector and investor interest. Let's imagine for a moment the high-end auction environment, the buzzing room, the glass cases lined with proof coins, and that rare 1979 cent gleaming under spotlight. The auctioneer reads its description. 1979 D Lincoln Cent, MS68RD, piece GS population 6, none finer. Bidding starts at $3,000. Hands rise, voices echo. Within minutes, the number doubles, triples, until the hammer falls at $12,500. Applause breaks out. Somewhere, a seller who once pulled that coin from a forgotten roll is watching, astonished. Stories like that keep the dream alive. They remind every viewer that it's possible. But markets are cyclical. Values rise and fall, and informed collectors know that patience pays. The real secret of coin investing isn't flipping for fast profit. It's holding quality pieces for decades. Over time, populations shrink as coins get damaged, lost, or regraded, and top examples naturally appreciate. A high-grade 1979 cent bought today for a few thousand might double or triple within 20 years. The combination of Kappa's intrinsic charm and limited surviving populations ensures steady demand. Looking ahead, technology is also transforming how coins are authenticated and traded. Artificial intelligence grading, blockchain provenance tracking, and digital registries are making it harder to fake or misrepresent coins. That means verified 1979 rarities could become even more trusted investment vehicles. Imagine scanning a coin's code and instantly seeing its full chain of ownership, from mint set to auction block to your collection. That transparency could push serious investors further into numismatics. We should also mention the educational side. Schools and museums increasingly use coins, like the 1979 cent, to teach history and economics. A single penny encapsulates lessons about design, metallurgy, inflation, and national identity. For a teacher explaining inflation, comparing the purchasing power of a 1979 cent to today's cent paints a vivid picture. What could a penny buy then versus now? Almost nothing today, yet symbolically everything about value, labor, and time is still pressed into that copper disc. So, when you hear about a coin being worth millions, remember, that number isn't just financial. It's cultural. It's the sum of stories, emotions, and the endless human fascination with rarity. The rumored $196 million valuation of a 1979 penny may be exaggerated, but it represents something real. The idea that extraordinary things can hide in ordinary places. Before we wrap this section, consider the coin's simple beauty again. Lincoln's calm face, the sharp lettering of "In God We Trust," the bold 1 cent beneath the memorial, every detail intentional. Over the decades, the dies have been replaced, the metal changed, yet the message endures: unity, trust, liberty, memory. The 1979 penny is a whisper from the past telling us that value isn't always about denomination. Sometimes, it's about meaning. As the story of the 1979 Lincoln cent continues, one thing becomes very clear. This coin is more than just a piece of metal. It's a time capsule of American history, innovation, and human craftsmanship. It reflects the hands that made it, the machines that shaped it, and the generations who used it without realizing that one day it could be worth more than gold itself. You see, every coin tells a story, but the 1979 cent tells many stories. Stories of minting errors that turned ordinary copper into fortune. Stories of collectors who spotted tiny details invisible to the common eye. And stories of those who once had this exact penny in their pocket, unaware that fate had placed $1 million treasure right there in their hand. The 1979 penny was struck during a pivotal time in U.S. minting. Technology was evolving, but precision still depended heavily on human supervision. Even the most advanced presses of that era could slip, misalign, or double strike under pressure. Every such error meant something unique, and today, collectors crave those mistakes. They don't see them as flaws. They see them as signatures of history. Imagine a coin with a slightly off-center strike, where Abraham Lincoln's face seems to drift a little too far left or right. that tiny shift can multiply the value by thousands. Or a coin with a doubled Liberty, or In God We Trust. These are called double dies, and they are among the holy grails of penny collectors. There are rumors and verified records of 1979 pennies with dramatic die clashes, meaning that two coin dies struck each other without a blank planchet in between, leaving ghost-like impressions of one side on the other. When such a coin reaches the market, it becomes a global headline in the numismatic community. Collectors from around the world, from Japan, Germany, and the Middle East, compete to own that tiny metal artifact. And with each auction, the price climbs higher, fueled by passion and rarity. The most fascinating part is how these coins sometimes escape into circulation. Think about it. A worker at the mint in 1979 could have had a small bag of newly struck pennies. One coin might have had an error, but at the time, it wasn't noticed. That coin went into circulation, maybe through a vending machine or a grocery store, and from there, it began its long journey. It passed through hands, pockets, and drawers for decades. It may have fallen into a piggy bank, been buried in a jar, or hidden in an attic box. And then, one day, someone finds it, a collector, a historian, or even a child, and realizes that the worn old penny in their hand is worth $100,000 or more. When we talk about the value skyrocketing to $196 million, we're not just talking about ordinary market prices. We're talking about the symbolic and collector-driven valuation that comes from once-in-a-lifetime auctions. You see, some collectors are not buying metal, they're buying stories. They want to own history, to own that one piece that everyone else missed. And when demand meets such extreme rarity, price becomes a matter of prestige rather than practicality. There have been real cases in the world of rare coins where values inflated beyond comprehension, just because one passionate billionaire wanted to add a legendary piece to his private vault. The 1979 penny's design, crafted with such care by Victor David Brenner, continues to inspire artists and engravers around the world. The smooth, classical lines of Lincoln's portrait, the delicate curvature of his hair, the subtle shading on his coat, each detail is like poetry in metal. Brenner's initials, BDB, placed modestly at the bottom of the shoulder, have become one of the most recognized artist signatures in numismatic art. And though the original 1909 version of the Lincoln cent was made of pure copper, by 1979 the metal composition had changed to 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it a slightly different hue and feel. That combination made it durable and long-lasting, yet it also gave each coin its own patina over time. Collectors often examine the tone and luster under magnification. Some 1979 pennies have developed beautiful rainbow-like colors after decades of oxidation, a process that occurs naturally but unpredictably. This unique toning can add thousands to a coin's worth because no two are ever alike. It's nature's own artwork on a piece of history. Under a jeweler's light, the deep copper turns to gold, green, and violet hues, a mesmerizing sight for any enthusiast. And then comes the weight, around 3.11 grams for the copper version, which was standard for U.S. cents before 1982. Each of those grams represents both a physical and historical weight, the burden of inflation, the evolution of minting, the persistence of the American economy. But what if you found one that's slightly heavier or lighter? That could be another sign of rarity. A difference of just a fraction of a gram can indicate a planchet error, meaning the blank used was thicker, thinner, or even struck from the wrong metal, sometimes an experimental alloy used during mint testing. Those rare composition errors are among the most valuable in coin collecting, sometimes selling for tens of thousands of dollars because they tell the story of a mistake that was never supposed to exist. Let's imagine the scene of discovery. Somewhere, maybe in a quiet town, a young man opens an old jar of coins that belonged to his grandfather. He starts cleaning them one by one, when suddenly, a slightly shiny 1979 penny catches his eye. Something about it looks different: the color, the edges, the shine. He takes it to a local coin shop, where the owner pulls out a magnifier, looks at it, and his face changes instantly. "You might want to sit down," he says. That exact moment, that breath of disbelief, is what makes numismatics so fascinating. Every collector lives for that possibility that a simple coin in their hand could rewrite their life story. Now, you might wonder, how do experts determine whether a 1979 penny is truly worth millions? They rely on meticulous grading systems established by organizations like the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC. These organizations inspect every tiny detail, from the strike quality to the surface preservation to the presence of any minting anomaly. Coins graded as MS-70, meaning perfect mint state, are the crown jewels of any collection. But even those graded MS-65 or higher can fetch enormous sums, depending on rarity and market timing. What makes things even more exciting is that there are still unconfirmed varieties out there. Every few years, a new discovery is made: a different die pairing, a doubled mint mark, or a unique off-metal strike, and suddenly, the entire collector community lights up. The price guides get updated, news articles spread across forums and TV shows, and another ordinary coin becomes a legend overnight. In 1979's case, the variations between the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints give us multiple subtypes to study and collect. The San Francisco S mint mark pennies from that year, for instance, include both Type 1 and Type 2 proofs. Type 1 had a filled S, while Type 2 featured a clearer, more defined S, and that small difference changed the game completely. Proof coins, struck with special dies and polished planchets, were not meant for circulation. They were collector's items, shining like mirrors. But over time, some proof coins slipped into the wild, making them even more valuable when found in circulated condition. Owning a 1979's Type 2 proof penny today is like holding a glowing piece of minting history, a whisper from a time when craftsmanship was still more art than automation. Now, when enthusiasts talk about a $196 million valuation, they often refer to extreme private sales, legendary bids, or the theoretical top-end estimates for the rarest possible combination, a flawless, unique mint error combined with a perfect strike and historic provenance. Provenance, that is, the documented ownership history of a coin, can alone add millions to its value if the coin once belonged to a famous collector or appeared in a renowned auction. Imagine if a 1979 penny came from the estate of a former U.S. Mint director or a legendary numismatist. That coin story would travel around the world, multiplying its allure and its price. But even beyond the money, there's an emotional connection collectors feel with this humble copper cent. It represents something pure, the idea that even the smallest and most ordinary object can hide extraordinary value. It teaches patience, observation, and respect for detail. It connects us across generations, because the penny in your hand might once have bought a piece of candy in 1979, sat in a drawer through the 80s and 90s, and now rests in your collection as a relic of the past century. When you flip a 1979 penny in your palm, think about the lives it touched, the hands that exchanged it, the pockets that carried it, the dreams it traveled with. Every scratch tells a story, every mark a memory. And in that sense, its true value might be far beyond millions, its priceless history preserved in copper. As the story of the 1979 penny moves into the modern day, something magical happens. What was once just a small copper coin becomes a symbol of discovery, patience, and hidden fortune. We now live in a world dominated by digital payments, where most people swipe cards or tap phones without ever thinking about coins. Yet, Somewhere in that shift, the 1979 penny quietly gained immortality. Collectors, historians, and treasure hunters all across the world began to realize that the coins we take for granted might carry the legacy of an entire era, and perhaps unimaginable value. In today's collector market, the 1979 Lincoln cent still stands as one of the most studied and talked about coins. It's no longer just about copper and weight, it's about mystery, rarity, and the thrill of the hunt. The standard copper composition version still weighs about 3.11 grams, as it did back in the day, but every tiny detail matters. Is it perfectly struck? Is there a die crack running across the portrait? Is there a faint doubling around the letters? These are the questions that make a coin worth pennies, or millions. Experts say that fewer than a dozen 1979 Lincoln cents have been found in pristine MS-70 condition, the grade that represents absolute perfection. Each of these coins shows flawless luster, razor-sharp edges, and a surface that mirrors light like a liquid. When such a coin appears at an auction, collectors around the world hold their breath. Even a coin graded MS-69, just one step below perfect, can sell for thousands. And if it's an error coin, like a double die or an off-metal strike, then the bidding wars go wild. To understand why some versions of this coin are valued at a staggering $196 million, you need to step into the world of elite numismatics, a world where passion outshines logic. There are private collectors, billionaires, and even museums that compete for unique coins, and when rarity meets story, money becomes just a number. A 1979 cent that was struck on a gold planchet, or with a full mirrored-proof surface, or with a dramatic minting error could easily trigger an astronomical valuation, not because it's made of gold, but because it's one of one. The only one that exists. And in collecting, one of one is priceless. Let's talk about one of the most famous myths, the story of the $196 million penny. It began circulating online and in collector forums, fueled by the discovery of ultra-rare pennies that fetched record-breaking sums. One such rumor claimed that a 1979 penny with a minting flaw and perfect condition sold privately for nearly $200 million. While official records don't confirm that exact sale, the story captured the imagination of millions. And that's the beauty of numismatics. Sometimes, the legend becomes more valuable than the coin itself. But behind the myth lies a powerful truth. Even if your 1979 penny isn't worth millions, it still has value beyond measure. Because collecting coins teaches patience, curiosity, and respect for detail, traits that are becoming rare in the modern world. Every collector knows the feeling. The quiet thrill of opening a roll of coins, scanning each one under a magnifying glass, waiting for that glimmer of difference that could change everything. And sometimes, that difference is just a tiny doubling on the letter D or a misalignment of the date. But that tiny flaw can mean the difference between a penny and a payday. Let's explore how the modern market works for this iconic coin. On online auction sites and in private sales, the 1979 Lincoln cent trades hands daily. Circulated coins, those that have been used and show signs of wear, typically sell for 1 or 2 cents unless they have a visible mint error. But uncirculated coins, the ones that were never touched by human hands after minting, can fetch anywhere from $5 to $500 depending on grade. Rare varieties, like the 1979 S-Type 2 proof, can go for thousands. And unique errors, like the off-metal strike, pennies minted accidentally on dime or foreign planchets, can sell for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. What's fascinating is how global this coin's fame has become. Collectors in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East now actively search for 1979 US cents, especially those with error varieties. The internet has turned what used to be a local American hobby into an international treasure hunt. Coin grading companies have full-time staff dedicated to authenticating and certifying these coins, and every new discovery shakes the community. Just one verified new variety can rewrite the price charts overnight. So, how do you know if your 1979 penny might be rare or valuable? The first step is observation. Look closely at the mint mark. A D means Denver, S means San Francisco, and if there's no mark, it's from Philadelphia. Check if the date or letters look doubled, blurred, or thick. Examine the color. Unusual tones, like silverish or gold hues, might indicate wrong metal strikes. Feel the edges. If they're off-center or uneven, it could be a misstrike. And if you think you've found something unusual, never clean the coin. Cleaning can destroy its surface and reduce its value dramatically. Instead, take it to a professional coin grader or dealer. Every big discovery starts small. The person who finds $1 million penny is often someone who simply decided to look closely. Someone who saw beauty and possibility where others saw nothing special. That's the magic of collecting. It rewards attention, curiosity, and patience. When we talk about the value of $196 million, it's not just a number, it's a symbol. It's a reminder that value is created by rarity, story, and desire. The 1979 penny is a bridge between ordinary life and extraordinary history. It reminds us that even the smallest things can hold enormous power when viewed through the right lens. In a way, the coin represents humanity's eternal hope, the idea that something simple, humble, and overlooked might turn out to be something magnificent. Imagine holding that coin in your hand. The copper glows softly under the light. The face of Abraham Lincoln, calm and wise, looks back at you, the same face that has graced the penny for over a century. Behind him, the word, liberty, reminding you that freedom and value often come from perseverance. Above him, the motto, "In God We Trust," echoing faith across generations. And on the back, the proud image of the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol of strength and unity. That's not just a coin, that's art, philosophy, and history fused into one small circle of metal. Collectors often say that coins speak, not with words, but with presence. The 1979 penny whispers the story of an era, of people who worked hard, saved change, and lived simple lives. It's a symbol of America's everyday strength, the kind of quiet resilience that builds nations. And when one such coin ends up being worth millions, it reminds us that greatness often hides in plain sight. So, whether you're a beginner collector or a seasoned expert, take a moment to appreciate what you hold. Check your jars, your drawers, your old wallets. Somewhere in your home, there might be a coin that carries history, luck, and maybe even fortune. Because that's what keeps the legend alive, the possibility that one small, copper-colored circle could change your life forever. In the end, the story of the 1979 penny isn't just about money. It's about discovery. It's about paying attention to details, cherishing what others ignore, and believing that sometimes miracles hide in the ordinary. Every great treasure begins as something overlooked, until someone decides to look a little closer. So next time you find a penny, don't toss it aside. Hold it up to the light, turn it slowly in your hand, and remember this story. Because who knows? That little 1979 cent, that single, shining piece of history, might just be your key to the extraordinary.